what happens when two broken hearts collide in the most unexpected way. Meet Nick, a 28-year-old landscaper trying to rebuild his life after divorce. When he takes a job at Ellen's home, a woman still healing from her own loss. As they work together in her overgrown garden, a bond begins to blossom, revealing feelings neither of them anticipated. Will they find the courage to embrace this new connection? Or will their pasts keep them apart? Stay tuned for a heartfelt journey of love and healing, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing stories. Hello, I'm Nick. I'm 28, divorced, and currently trying to rebuild my life from scratch. I work in landscaping, mostly for private clients around town. It's not my dream job, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy, which honestly helps more than therapy ever did. After the divorce, I moved into a small rental, picked up extra work, and tried not to think too much. I wasn't dating or going out, just working, eating, sleeping, and repeating the cycle. That's where my mind was when I got a new job request from a woman named Ellen. She needed help cleaning up her backyard. It seemed like an easy gig, and I just needed a little extra cash. That's how I ended up taking a landscaping job on the edge of town, on a quiet street lined with older houses and overgrown lawns. The client's name was Ellen. I didn't know much about her, just that she wanted help fixing up her backyard. When I pulled up that morning, I expected someone older, but when she opened the door, I was caught off guard. She was elegant, not just in appearance, but in how she carried herself. Soft smile, calm eyes, a kind of grace I hadn't seen in a while. "Hi," she said. "You must be Nick. Come on back. The garden's a mess." It was overrun with shrubs, weeds, and untrimmed trees, but I'd seen worse. As I started working, she brought me a cup of coffee. "You like it black?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Thanks." At first, it was small talk, weather, plants. Her dog Rufus, who barked but never bit. But after an hour or so, I noticed she stuck around, not hovering, just present, watching, talking, comfortable. She told me her husband had planted most of the garden years ago. He passed away 3 years back. "I let it all go after that," she said. Almost like she was admitting something. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. I'd been through my own version of loss. A divorce 6 months earlier that left me feeling like a stranger in my own skin. I hadn't told her that yet. After a while, I got into a rhythm, pulling weeds, trimming hedges, laying out new soil. She sat nearby in a lawn chair, reading a book. It felt peaceful. No pressure, just work, fresh air, and someone kind nearby. Around noon, she brought out lunch. "Hope you don't mind sandwiches," she smiled. I sat with her at the patio table. She asked me where I was from and what got me into landscaping. I told her it was just a side thing, something to stay busy after my marriage fell apart. She didn't pry, just listened. Before I left that day, she walked me to the gate. "You're easy to talk to," she said, almost surprised. "Thanks," I smiled. "So are you." Then she paused and looked at me with a quiet warmth. "You remind me what it's like to feel excited again." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and said, "See you Wednesday." She smiled. "I'll be here." Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about that look in her eyes. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was something deeper. Like someone slowly waking up after a long, quiet sleep. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel so empty. I came back that Wednesday, just like I said I would. I pulled into Ellen's driveway a little late, but I figured 5 minutes wouldn't kill anyone. Still, I was halfway through rehearsing some excuse in my head when I saw her standing outside, waiting with 2 coffee mugs in hand. "You're 5 minutes late," she said, smiling. "But I forgive you." I raised both hands. "Traffic and the barista at the corner took forever." She handed me one of the mugs. "This one's from my kitchen. Thought I'd save you the trouble." It was still warm, not store-bought, brewed at home, simple and strong, just like everything else about her. That day, the work picked up where I'd left off. More trimming, clearing, reshaping what would have been neglected for too long. But the rhythm was different. Ellen didn't just watch this time. She joined in, gloves on, hair tied back, sweeping out dead leaves from the brick path, pointing out which plants had sentimental value and which ones she didn't care to keep. "I always loved these roses," she said, kneeling next to a scraggly bush, "but I never had the energy to cut them back. They remind me of our first house." I asked her if it was hard seeing it all so overgrown, if it felt like letting go of something. She paused for a moment, brushing dirt from her hands. "At first, yes, but now it feels like something's waking up." The day went by faster than I expected. We talked more than we worked, but it didn't feel like wasted time. I learned she used to be a school librarian, that she hadn't been on a date since her husband passed away 3 years ago, that she liked thunderstorms and used to write poetry she never showed anyone. In return, I told her about the little apartment I was renting. How quiet it felt at night. How sometimes I'd fall asleep on the couch with the TV on just to avoid thinking too much. I didn't mean to share that much, but it came out naturally. "You ever feel like your whole life hit pause and everyone else kept playing?" I said. We were sitting on the back steps by then, the late afternoon sun hitting the trees just right. Rufus, her old golden retriever, lay out on the grass near us, snoring lightly. I took a sip of the coffee she'd made me hours earlier. It was cold now, but I didn't care. Everything about that moment felt still, like the world had paused just for us. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. "You know what I miss most? Being seen." She wasn't looking at me when she said it. Her eyes were fixed on the garden, on the places where green was finally returning. "I don't feel invisible when you're around," she added. I sat with that for a moment. I didn't know what to say. There wasn't really anything to say, so I didn't speak. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and nodded. "Thank you," I said. She smiled like I'd just handed her something valuable. Before I left, she asked if I was free on Saturday. "I want to pick out some flowers," she said, "and maybe you can help me decide where to put them." "Absolutely," I said. "Good," she replied. "I'll make lunch." Driving home, I kept hearing that one line in my head. "I don't feel invisible when you're around." And I realized something. Neither did I. Saturday morning came with that perfect kind of spring air. Cool enough for a light jacket, warm enough to know winter was finally over. I got to Ellen's place a few minutes before 10 o'clock. She was already outside, locking the front door, wearing faded jeans and a white linen shirt. Her hair was tied back, and she had a tote bag slung over one shoulder. "You're early," she said, smiling, as she noticed me walking up the path. "I didn't want to miss flower selection day," I said, grinning. "Well, you're in for it. I take flowers very seriously." She drove us to the nursery, a place about 15 minutes out of town, surrounded by open fields and oak trees. Her SUV smelled like lavender and lemon. The back seat was full of reusable shopping bags, an old gardening hat, and a rolled-up blanket. Rufus was with us too, lounging in the back like he owned the place. The drive was easy. We talked about music. She liked jazz, old school stuff. Ella Fitzgerald, Miles Davis. I told her I mostly listened to whatever was playing on the radio, which made her roll her eyes. "I'll make you a playlist," she said. "You need better background music in your life." The nursery was quiet, except for birds and the hum of sprinklers. It wasn't fancy. Gravel paths, wooden signs, a little greenhouse at the back. But Ellen lit up as soon as we walked in. She knew the names of everything, even the hidden ones. "These," she said, pointing to a row of Bionas. "They look cute now, but wait until mid-July. Total divas." I followed her through rows of flowers, soil bags, and ceramic pots. She moved with confidence. Not rushed, not unsure, just at her rhythm. She picked up plants, turned them around, held them toward the light, reading a book only she understood. "You've done this before," I said. She glanced at me. "Gardening was our thing. Me and David. He wasn't good at it, picked the wrong flowers for the wrong spot. But he loved the process. Said it made him feel like he was building something." That was the first time she said his name. It hung in the air for a second. Not heavy, just real. We ended up buying marigolds, creeping thyme, lavender, 2 climbing roses, some wildflowers, and a few pots for the porch. When we got back to her place, we didn't even go inside. We headed straight to the backyard, and for the next few hours, we planted everything. She didn't just stand around giving directions. She was right there with me on her knees, digging, laughing, when Rufus walked through the freshly tilled soil. She teased me for planting too crooked. I teased her for talking to the plants like they were people. "You have to talk to them," she said. "They're alive. They need to be seen, too." Around mid-afternoon, we took a break. We were sweaty, dirty, and completely content. We sat on the grass, drinking lemonade she brought out in mason jars. Rufus lay between us, finally tired out. I asked her, without really thinking, if she ever considered dating again. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at me and said, "I thought about it, but it never felt right. No one ever made me feel like myself again." She stopped, looked down at the grass, then added softly, "Until lately." I didn't push. I didn't respond. I just sat there, letting her words sink in. When the sun started to dip, we stood and looked at the garden. It wasn't perfect, but it looked alive again, full of color, like it mattered. "Want to stay for lunch?" she asked. "I'd love to." She made grilled cheese and tomato soup, nothing fancy, just comforting. We ate out on the patio, still wearing our dirty clothes, still laughing about how Rufus tried to eat the marigolds. At one point, she looked at me and said, "I forgot what it felt like to have a day like this, a real day." I looked at her, and I felt something shift, something honest, something warm. Later, when I was about to leave, she walked into my truck. She placed her hand gently on my arm. "Thank you, Nick," she said. "For today, you brought something back into this house." I met her eyes and said, "I think you've brought something back into me too." And I meant it. The week had been hectic, and I hadn't heard from Ellen much since our Saturday together. She texted me a couple of times, thanking me for helping her with the garden, but I was getting the feeling she was keeping her distance. I didn't blame her. After all, we were both in strange territory. She had her life, I had mine, and neither of us had quite figured out how this friendship of ours would play out. It was Thursday night when she finally reached out. I had just finished up work and was sitting on my couch, scrolling through emails. The phone buzzed. A message from Ellen. "Are you still awake?" I glanced at the clock, 10:45 p.m. I wasn't particularly tired, but I wasn't expecting anyone to reach out this late either. "Yeah, what's up?" I texted back. A few seconds later, her reply came through. "I need someone to talk to. Can I call you?" That was unusual. Ellen wasn't the type to ask for help or lean on anyone. In the weeks I'd known her, she'd always seemed strong, independent, like she could handle anything that came her way. But tonight, there was something different in her words. "Of course," I typed. "Call me." The phone rang a minute later. I picked it up quickly. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "What's going on?" There was a pause on the other end, then a shaky sigh. "I don't know how to say this, Nick," she began, "but I'm feeling overwhelmed, more than usual, and I just needed someone to talk to." I sat up on the couch, my heart starting to beat a little faster. Ellen's voice was different, quiet, unsure, like she wasn't quite sure where to start, or if she should even say what was on her mind. "Hey, it's okay," I said gently. "You don't have to explain everything all at once. Just take your time. What's going on?" She took a deep breath before she spoke again. And when she did, her words came slowly, as if she were processing each one carefully. "It's just, I've been thinking a lot about David, about everything we went through together, and how much I still miss him. And I've been trying to fill that space, but it's not working. David was her late husband. I knew that much, but she had rarely spoken about him in detail. She mentioned him in passing, but there was always this distance when she did, like she didn't want to open that chapter too wide." "I get that," I said, my voice soft. "I think it's normal, but maybe you're trying to do too much all at once. You don't need to rush through it, Ellen." She was quiet for a few moments. "I know, it's just hard, Nick. Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck, like I'm living in the past while everyone else is moving forward. And then I met you and everything shifted. The last part caught me off guard." "What do you mean?" "I didn't expect to feel the way I do," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "You've made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Something real." I felt my chest tighten. There was something in her tone, something raw and honest that made my pulse quicken. I couldn't quite put it into words, but there was a connection between us that felt like it had been quietly growing, like a plant that had been watered without either of us noticing. "I didn't mean to make things complicated," she said quickly, almost apologetically. "You haven't," I replied, trying to reassure her. I think I've been feeling the same way. I just didn't know how to say it." There was a long silence after that, and for a moment, I thought the conversation might end there. But then Ellen spoke again, her voice more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. "Do you ever feel like you've let someone in, even when you're not sure you should have?" The question hit me hard. I had to think for a second before I answered. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think I've let you in, and I don't know if I should have either." It was the truth. and it felt oddly freeing to say it out loud. Neither of us had asked for this. Neither of us had expected anything to develop between us. But something was happening, something that neither of us had planned for. "I don't want to mess things up," she said after a long pause. "I don't want to make things more difficult than they already are." "You're not messing anything up, Ellen," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "We're both just trying to figure things out together, if you want." There was a quiet moment on the other end of the line, and then Ellen's voice, a little steadier now, came through. "I do want that, Nick. I really do." It was late, and neither of us had any real answers. But in that moment, I felt like we were finally on the same page. The unspoken tension between us wasn't something to be afraid of. It was something we could work through together. "I'll be here," I said softly. "Thank you," she whispered, and then hung up the phone. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, the words lingering in the air. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like things might be moving in the right direction. The weeks after that late-night conversation had been transformative. Ellen and I both knew that things between us were different now. We weren't just friends anymore. We were something deeper, something more meaningful. It wasn't just about two people who had been through their own struggles finding comfort in each other. There was a real connection, a bond that had grown slowly, yet it was undeniable. By the time the weather had shifted and spring was beginning to settle in, we had spent a lot of time together, just talking and being with each other. There was no rush. We both knew that the relationship we were building needed time, but also needed honesty and trust. And somewhere along the way, that honesty turned into something more. Love. It was clear we were both ready. One evening, as we sat in the living room of her house, her hand resting in mine, I knew it was time. "Ellen," I began, my voice steady, but filled with a certain nervousness. "I know we've been through a lot, and I know you've had your doubts, but I can't ignore how I feel anymore. I don't want to keep this a secret. I want us to be official, to be together for real. And honestly, I'm ready for more with you." Ellen looked at me, her gaze intense, but there was a softness in her eyes that made my heart skip a beat. She took a deep breath, her lips curving into a small smile. "Nick, I've never been more certain of anything in my life." There was no hesitation. We didn't need more words. She leaned forward, and in that moment, we kissed. A kiss that solidified everything. It wasn't just about love. It was about commitment. It was about us saying, without any doubts, that we wanted to build a future together. And we did. We officially started seeing each other, and the world around us seemed to fade away. It felt like we had everything we needed in each other. Our relationship wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. We both had baggage. We both had our fears. But we were willing to face those together. Our bond only grew stronger. And as the months passed, it became clear that we were in this for the long haul. 7 months later, Ellen and I sat down one evening, just as the sun was setting, casting a soft golden light across the room. We had spent so many nights talking about our dreams, our lives, our future, and one of those conversations had always come up: the idea of children. It wasn't something we had planned on initially, but we had been discussing it for a while. Ellen had been open with me about her struggles to have children. She couldn't have any of her own, and I had come to understand how much it weighed on her. But she never let it define her, and that strength was one of the many things I admired about her. I think it's time, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Nick, I think we should adopt. The idea hadn't been a fleeting one. We had talked about it many times, but now it felt right. Our home, our life together, was ready for a child who needed love, a family, a child who, like us, could find a place in a world that hadn't always been kind to them. The decision was made. A few months later, we went to the local adoption agency. We met with social workers, filled out paperwork, and started the process. It wasn't easy, but we were committed. It felt like the next logical step in our journey, creating a family of our own, one that was built not just on love, but on choice and purpose. We were matched with a young girl, just 5 years old, whose story broke both of our hearts. Her name was Sophie. She had been in foster care for most of her life, and when we met her, she was shy, hesitant, but hopeful. Ellen and I knew immediately that she was the one. Bringing Sophie into our lives was a beautiful chaos. The house became filled with laughter, a sense of purpose, and a love that expanded in ways we hadn't imagined. Ellen and I had both found something in each other that we hadn't known we were missing. We were a family now, not because it was easy, but because we chose it all of it. We chose to love each other, to be there for each other, and to create something real. As I look back now at everything that's happened, I'm in awe of how much life has changed. I had come into Ellen's life when she was at a crossroads, searching for something, for connection, for purpose, for real love. And I found all of it in her. Despite the difference in our ages, despite the complexities of our pasts, Ellen gave me a love I didn't even know was possible. She made me feel seen, valued, and needed. With her, I was whole. She made me feel like the best version of myself. And I had no doubt that she felt the same way about me. In the end, age didn't matter. What mattered was that we had found each other. We had both experienced loss, and we had both found a way to heal together. Our love wasn't just about the passion we shared, but the partnership, the quiet moments, and the way we built our life. Ellen had become more than just a partner. She was my everything. And as we sat together, watching Sophie play in the yard, I knew that this was where I was meant to be. I had found what I had been looking for my whole life. I had found my family. And no matter how different we were, no matter the obstacles we had faced, this was the love I had been waiting for all along.